Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this fantastic Wednesday afternoon. Again, still sort of milking the Giants' victory before we have to play the Cowboys on Thursday. For those of you guys who are interested in football, I highly recommend listening to all the football podcasts. We have so many of them going down. The sports podcast is happening slightly after when I'm done with my podcast segment right here. So if you're really interested in football, I recommend tuning into that. And there's also an actual football podcast that we have as well that happens before my live segment goes on. So I believe it starts at 10:30. If you guys are interested in football, in the NFL news, and anything like that, then I recommend tuning into those podcasts. And aside from that, though, you guys came here for basketball. So in this first segment, we are going to be doing a playoff recap of the games that ended up happening last night. There were two games that happened last night. Wouldn't be surprised if none of you guys knew that those two games were going on. And I'll talk a little bit about why in the first segment. Then in the second segment, we are going to do another playoff prediction of the games that are going to happen tonight at 7:30 and 9:30 respectively, both on ESPN. So be sure to tune into those games if you guys are interested. Spoiler alert, Caitlin Clark is going to be playing at 7:30 for those of you guys interested. I know everybody here loves watching Caitlin Clark play. If you don't, then tough. You're missing out on some really good ball. And in the third segment, we are going to look at the Lakers and their starting lineup. JJ Redick just announced the starting lineup today, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Lakers, LeBron James, all that stuff. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to talk about the other LA team who might have a little bit more problems than they need, and I'm sort of expecting, these are like just speculations that I'm expecting going into the season, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, given Kawhi Leonard and his injury and the timetable of his injury. We also have a special fifth segment that I like to reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you're interested. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, burning question, or something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You can send in your message and donations using the $ below the chat box, and it's guaranteed. Your comment is guaranteed to get featured on the show. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, that's fine. You can also use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. And without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about these WNBA playoffs and the playoff games that happened over the week. Not over the weekend, excuse me, yesterday. Now, I've been saying this from the mountaintops. I'm going to preach it till the day I die. These WNBA playoff games should not be happening at around the same time that the NFL is going on. Because I guarantee you that nobody, I kid you not, nobody, unless they are a WNBA follower like me now, knows that Sabrina Ionescu just broke the Liberty record and tied the Liberty record for most points scored in a postseason game for the Liberty. She's ended the game with 36 points and also ended with 9 assists as well. This is the most points that any Liberty player has scored in a playoff game, and the fact that it was an elimination game just makes it even more impressive. But guess what? Nobody's talking about that because all the other sports, ESPN, Bleacher Report, everything else, they're all talking about the NFL because the NFL draws more attention. Not to mention they're also talking about college football because it also draws more attention. So let me ask you, what on earth are you doing starting these postseasons in the same time as the NFL? She ended the game with 36 points, but no one's going to talk about that because people would rather talk about Bryce Young being benched or Malik Neighbors going off in the NFL. It's like all of these things are happening in the NFL, but all of these things are happening in the WNBA. They aren't getting covered because it's at the same time as the NFL. So this season, the playoffs for the WNBA, they should start on August. And I know that the Olympics happened around that time as well, and that also interfered with a lot of the WNBA schedules, but these playoff games should only happen in August, especially in this type of season. This is the most successful season that the WNBA has had in the history of its entire conviction. This is the first time that the WNBA is actually drawing viewership, and they're blowing it in the most important part of their season. They're absolutely blowing it. And I guarantee you, nobody is going to remember who won the WNBA finals. I guarantee you. Guarantee you. And no one is going to remember this amazing, outstanding performance from Sabrina. No one is going to remember that. But regardless, back to the recap and what I was saying. The Liberty, they ended up winning 91-82 against the Atlanta Dream. The Dream did not make it easy, though. They were fighting back a lot in this game. And they started out the game with honestly, a rather respectable lead. I believe they were up by, the score was 28-19 going into the first quarter, ending the first quarter. Atlanta was up by almost 10 points. And it seemed the Liberty, they ended up going on a bit of a run in the second quarter. And the big problem for the Liberty was, in this game specifically, was that they weren't really hitting that many three-pointers. They were going on a lot of cold streaks at the three-point line. There was a time where they went 0 for 7, then Sabrina broke the streak by hitting a 3, and then right after that they went 0 for 5 again, and then it took another Liberty player to end up breaking that streak. So it was rather shaky three-point shooting that allowed the Atlanta Dream to sort of stay in the game longer than normally expected. But after the second half, after the first half, after the first half and the team made their adjustments, it seemed that the Liberty were getting back on track. Sabrina limited her three-point shot selection. She ended up taking, I believe, 2 three-pointers in the entire second half of that game and focused more on, attacking the basket and taking a lot higher percentage shots. And it ultimately ended up working out for her, obviously. Ended the game with 36 points. What better of an elimination performance were you expecting? And Brenna Stewart was a little bit quiet in this matchup. She ended up going 6 for 16 from the field, only scoring 13 points. She got blocked on a very bad layup attempt down the court that I remember, and I was like, what in the world are you doing? But aside from that, the Liberty, they did what they had to do. This is a team that couldn't face adversity in the last finals appearance that they were in. It's known that they ended up losing in the finals because A'ja Wilson was just being A'ja Wilson and just completely dominated them. And it seemed like in that finals, the year before, they didn't know how to handle the pressure. But now it seems like they've sort of gotten new life and they're willing to make that final push to finally win the finals in the WNBA and actually legitimately close out this series. And they've done that very well. So really no surprises here on this kind of performance. So round 1, the Liberty end up moving on in a sweep. And then there's the other game that ended up happening directly after the Liberty game, which was the Aces going up against the Seattle Storm. Now, the Aces, from the start of the game, it seemed like the Aces, they were clear-cut the better team. There were moments where the scoring was a little bit lackluster, but the Aces were able to keep Seattle in check thanks to their defense, and they were able to hold it off long enough for them to come out with a win. And so the Aces end up advancing to the semifinals as well. They're going to face off against the Liberty in the next round in a best-of-5 series, and after winning 83-76 against the Seattle Storm. So a lot of people think that, Seattle should keep their head high, because they did play rather well in this elimination game. It's just the Aces were a far better team. They had Gabby Williams that ended up scoring 20 points for them in this elimination game. They had a guard named Skylar Diggins-Smith who ended up getting 13 points and also being able to get 10 assists along with that as well as 3 steals. And they played, they played rather well. The biggest problem was that they did not have many people in the rotation. So all of the starters were playing a lot of minutes, and of course, not only does that drain your fatigue, but that also drains your mental strength, and you need you need to really stay locked in these postseasons in any sport. You have to be locked in. A'ja Wilson ended up having another dominant performance, 24 points and 13 rebounds. To finish the game. Kelsey Plum, you guys know I'm a Giants fan. I'm not a big fan of Kelsey Plum because of what happened with Darren Waller, but she ended the game with 29 points, was the leading scorer for both teams, and scored the most points in the game, 29 points, ended up shooting 11 for 15 from the field. Again, I'm not a big fan of Kelsey Plum, but still, this was a pretty good performance. It's just, Darren Waller. But anyways, the rest of the team, I mean, they didn't really need the rest of the team when you have Kelsey Plum and Aja Wilson, your number one and your number two option, both almost scoring 30 points. And obviously, the better team ended up winning in this matchup, the team with the MVP and the team with the very solid second option. So that's really not really much to say about this. Like, there were no upsets, and there haven't been any upsets so far. Maybe that is most likely to change going into the games that are happening later tonight, and that leaves us into the second segment where I predict who's going to end up winning in these matchups for the WNBA playoffs that are happening at 7:30 and 9:30 respectively. So I will be right back after this short break with my predictions. Be sure to stay tuned for that.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be doing a little bit of some playoff predictions for the WNBA. The next set of games is scheduled to happen at around 7:30 and 9:30 tonight. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about those games, what I expect from those games, what I expect from a lot of the players, all of that good stuff. So before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or something that you've just been dying to share. We are all ears. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then you can go ahead and use Super Chat. You just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, then that's totally fine, because you can always use the link displayed below the ticker as well, and send in your comments or donations that way. The link is GSMCpodcast.net. Either or really helps the show, and you'd be supporting us and our channel. So thank you for that if you guys end up doing that. So without further ado, let's go right ahead and talk about this next segment, which is going to be all about the WNBA and the postseason games that are going to be happening later on tonight. So I'll see if I can update this graphic a little bit, like when these teams end up advancing and when the semifinals have actually been decided. But as of right now, you guys know Liberty and the Aces, the two top teams in their matchups. They're going to match up against each other. This is, I believe, a WNBA Finals rematch in the semifinals. So would not be surprised if the team that ends up winning this ends up winning the championship. However, they do have some adversaries to go up against in this matchup. They have the Lynx. They're expecting to close out against the Phoenix Mercury later tonight. Their game is going to happen at 9:30 on ESPN, for those of you guys that want to tune in. The Lynx, they have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate on their team. They have a very solid defensive team. They also have a Coach of the Year candidate on their team as well. So, coaching the roster. Now, the Sun on, not the Sun, excuse me, the Mercury, they do have, like, I guess you could say the star talents, like, star players on their roster. They do have Diana Taurasi at the starting position. They also have Brittany Griner at the center position, one of the more popular players in the WNBA, and, a little bit of an infamous player in the WNBA, but I'm not really going to talk much about that. And a lot of people, I noticed that, yesterday I noticed that in the entire group that we have, like, with the sports and, like, the football podcast and all of that, a lot of people, they did not tune into a lot of these WNBA games because, but it was on accident because of all the football that's been going on. And again, I have to say this, I'm going to say this every single time, these WNBA playoffs should not happen during football. It just cannot. And I give credit to these people for scheduling the most important games in the playoff series on days where there's no football being played. That's much more like it, yes, but still, during the NFL regular season, nobody is going to be paying attention to the WNBA. Like I said before, Sabrina ended with 36 points. Barely anybody is talking about it because people are more focused on the NFL and a lot of news and stories that you can generate from the NFL because a lot of people are already interested in the NFL. So it's really it's just bad. It's really just bad scheduling in my opinion. And these important games, they're happening on days where there's no football. So I can give credit to that at the very least, but still that shouldn't be like that. So back to the predictions. I have a feeling that the Lynx are going to close this game out. And, a lot of people, they also, this has sort of been the trend that's been going on in the WNBA. Like, the top seeds, they always seem to advance, and they always, it looks like that it's just going to be a repeat of what we saw last night with the higher seeded teams and advancing in the next round. And I should also explain how the WNBA playoffs are handled for those of you guys that don't know, because actually I had somebody else that was in our group, I'm not going to mention names, but he didn't know how the playoff format was structured really. And I don't blame him because the WNBA is doing a terrible job at, the scheduling, and no one's really going to be paying attention to these. So essentially the WNBA playoffs, the formatting, the first round is going to be a best of 3. However, the way that they play their games, it's not like, okay, the leading team, the team at the higher seed, plays the first home game, and then you go the next series playing at the lower seeded team's home. That's not how it works. It works as the same format as the NBA, where it's the higher seed plays 2 home games, and then directly after that, the lower seed gets their home game. So since this is a best of 3, the way that this works is that the higher seed gets to play 2 home games in a row, and then the lower seed gets the final home game if you need to play a game 3 in their home. So essentially the lower seed has to steal a game in order to even have a chance of winning in the first round. The lower seed has to steal a game it has to steal an away game. They could legitimately steal both away games, even though that's rather unlikely, especially in the NBA, but that's sort of how they're expected to win. They have to steal at least one, and that way they can go into the final game with home field advantage. And then in the semifinals, I'm pretty sure that's rather self-explanatory. They play the first 2 games in the higher-seeded team's home court, and then they play the next 2 games in the higher-seeded team's home court, and then the final game is in the higher-seeded team's home court where they have the home court advantage. So just in case any of you guys are curious as to how home court advantage works in the WNBA postseason. And like I said before, with the predictions, I think the Lynx are going to close out the series against the Mercury. Again, it's totally possible that the Mercury end up stealing a game because they do have Diana Taurasi, but I don't think that's really going to happen. I think the Lynx the last game that they played against the Lynx ended up winning 102-95. So it's going to be close, but I think the Lynx are going to end up closing out the series. And now we move on to the most popular game of the entire WNBA that's going to happen. Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, I should say, against the Connecticut Sun. This matchup right here, I have no doubt is going to be the most viewed playoff game in the entirety of the WNBA playoffs. Mainly because it's going to happen at 7:30, so everybody's going to be either at home and either doing nothing at a late night on Wednesday, not watching football, so they're going to turn on whatever is on ESPN. Lo and behold, it's Caitlin Clark. I have a feeling that this game is going to draw in a lot of viewership, especially since I'm expecting a huge game coming in from Caitlin in this elimination game. And, that might be a lot to ask, especially coming from a rookie, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we have at least one good competitive series in the WNBA postseason that can draw in its attention. And if there's any matchup that's going to do that, it's going to be the Fever against the Sun. Now, the Sun ended up destroying the Fever in the last game. The Sun ended up winning 93-69 in their last matchup. So it might be a little bit, what's a good word? Ludicrous to even assume that this could happen given the performance that they played. But I'm just really faithful with Caitlin Clark. I mean, I think she's going to ball out in this game, especially after losing and being really bad in the last game. I think she's going to just turn it completely around and force a game 3, so that way the Fever have a chance of actually winning this series at home. And if the narrative plays out, then Caitlin Clark would have won a playoff game and Diana Taurasi would have lost a playoff game, meaning that Caitlin Clark has had a much better season than Diana Taurasi by default. And that's my ultimate goal. I know I sound like a big Diana Taurasi hater, but really the reason why I feel this way about Diana is because of how she's treated Caitlin Clark. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The way that this woman introduced Caitlin Clark into the WNBA was incredibly unfair. It was a total act of jealousy, in my opinion, and it shouldn't have any place in the sports league. Yes, you can say that the league it's way tougher than it is, but you also have to give credit to where credit is due and actually, praise her for the good that she's done for this league. And not a single WNBA athlete has done that. And it's really it's a tragedy, in my opinion, because it's dividing the WNBA and it's dividing its fans. And that's not something that you want, especially for the WNBA. You all need to be behind the same person, and you all have to be behind the same purpose of bringing the WNBA recognition and notoriety that it deserves. But alienating yourself, and trying to alienate Caitlin Clark is not helping you. It's only making it worse. And I honestly because I'm all for I really like the fact that Caitlin in this entire season has just completely proved Diana wrong. And if she can win a postseason matchup, meanwhile Diana loses the postseason matchup, she could end up proving her even more wrong. And this is a big if the Mercury somehow are able to advance after being down in the series 1-0, and the Fever are also able to advance, we are going to have one of the most epic WNBA playoff matches ever. Old versus new, Diana versus Caitlin. We can finally see who is the better athlete currently right now in the WNBA, and that is going to be a matchup that everybody is going to want to tune into. And I would very much be looking forward to a matchup between the Mercury and the Indiana Fever. That would be amazing. And I really hope that that's what happens. And if that doesn't happen, then that's totally fine, because I wouldn't mind the Fever advancing in the next round. Even though for this matchup, I think this is going to 3 games. I'm sticking with it. I think the Fever and the Sun, they're going to end up going to 3 games. But the Lynx, they're going to end up closing out this series against the Mercury in this final game, win the series 2-0, and I'm sticking with that. I'm going to stick with that with my predictions. So let me know in the comments if you guys agree with those predictions, or if you guys think I'm being rather ridiculous, because I will admit that the Fever prediction is entirely based on optimism and just the expectation that Caitlin Clark is going to perform in this matchup. If she doesn't perform, then the Sun are going to end up winning this game. But aside from that, that's all that I have for this second segment. So now we'll go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about the Lakers and the starting lineup. JJ Redick recently just announced the starting lineup and who's going to start for the Lakers. And so I'll talk a little bit about that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at the Lakers starting lineup. It was just recently announced by JJ Redick himself. The lineups that are going to go into, well, the starting lineup that's going to start the season. And this was on Zach Lowe's podcast. This was, during ESPN. This is an ESPN analyst podcast. It's called the Low Post Podcast. And on that podcast, he had JJ Redick on there, and obviously he was asking him questions about the Lakers and what coaching decisions he'd make and what would be different. And the biggest question and the biggest takeaway from this podcast is the starting lineup. So Zach Lowe, he on the podcast reportedly asked, "Have you settled on a starting five?" And JJ Redick responded with, "Yeah, it'll be the starting five that went 23-10 last year." Now, that starting five is going to be consistent of D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves at the guard, Roy Hachimura, LeBron James, obviously, and Anthony Davis, duh. And that's your starting lineup. So it's D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Roy Hachimura, and the two obvious starters, LeBron and Anthony Davis. LeBron, he can play any position. It doesn't matter where you put him. And whether you want to put him at the small forward, whether you want to put him at the power forward, it really doesn't matter. Whether you want Roy at the power forward or Roy listed at power forward, again, it doesn't matter. Because 9 times out of 10, the ball is going to go to LeBron in the offense. And 9 times out of 10, it really doesn't matter where LeBron plays because LeBron is just going to be LeBron. So this lineup is all down to, a lot of people are going to complain about this lineup, especially with Anthony Davis not playing the 4. I saw a lot of Laker fans that were like, why don't you just let Anthony Davis play the 4? And I'm here to say, Anthony Davis is a big boy. He can play the 5, no problem. And given the offensive scheme that JJ Redick wants to run, he wants to run a new lineup that encourages spacing. Not entirely a 5-out, because a lot of people, they like to scrutinize the 5-out for just being looking for three-pointers, when that's not how the 5-out offense works out. The Nuggets have displayed their 5-out set in a completely different manner that encourages backdoor cuts and encourages 2-point attempts, more so than it actually encourages 3-point attempts. Granted, if there is a wide-open 3, obviously Jokic is going to hit the player that's wide open for 3, but the 5-out isn't just searching for a 3-point shot. And this lineup that JJ Redick is going for encourages the spacing that he desperately wants the Lakers to operate under. And I guess you could argue that it's a new change of pace for how the Lakers are playing, but in my opinion, this is how the Lakers should have been playing and how they should have been using Anthony Davis. I understand Anthony Davis likes to complain about not playing the power forward. Big deal. I'm sorry to say it, but big deal. Play the 5. You are tall enough. You are strong enough. You are a great defender, a good enough defender to play the 5. Go play the 5. And it irks me, it infuriates me that Anthony Davis is picky about his positions in an era where there is positionless basketball. Play the 5. But aside from that, hypothetically and theoretically, he should be playing the 5, because not only can he legitimately provide the spacing that the Lakers want, but in the pick and roll, not just in the pick and roll, but also on defense, he's He's supposed to be one of the league's best shot blockers and one of the best paint defenders in the league. That's what he should be. But unfortunately, he's somewhat regressed from his Pelicans days, which is rather sad to see. But really, he should be in a top 3 conversation for top big men of all time. He should be in that conversation. And this could be the season where he does that, given this offense, if the offense can work and operate as well as it should. I mean, granted, you do have to hit the three-pointers, because I'm sure they're going to be looking for a lot of three-pointers, especially with the shooters that they have, Dalton, Knecht, and all of that stuff. But yeah, this lineup, I have no problems in this lineup. I mean, let me know in the comments what you think of the starting lineup with D'Lo, Austin Reeves, Roy, LeBron, and AD. I think that's a pretty solid starting lineup. Again, D'Lo is going to have to pick up his game, especially with all the, postseason stuff and all of that things, with all the drama going on in the postseason. He definitely needs to pick up his game in the postseason, but if they can have a very good regular season start, then I think that this could mean some good things for the Lakers. Now, this might be, a little bit of bias because I am a LeBron fan, and I do think that you put LeBron on any team and he can make them a finals appearance team without a doubt. And there is somebody in the chat that I would like to acknowledge, that I would like to acknowledge, Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol? Hello, Pau Gasol. He says, salute to you, sir. He subscribed. Thank you so much for subscribing. And again, you guys, if you really want your comment or questions to get noticed, then go ahead and use Super Chat or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. It really helps the show. It makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. But back onto the starting lineup and back into what this article is saying. The Lakers lineup for the upcoming season includes the players that I just mentioned and as they make a serious run for the NBA title. Now, JJ Redick and his offensive vision for the Lakers in this season, as he's made headlines this season, NBA draft, by selecting Knecht and Bronny James, but they have since made no major offseason additions, which is a problem for the Lakers. Now, with much of the roster remaining from last season, JJ Redick is ready to lead the team into an upcoming season, and during his interview with ESPN, he shared his vision for the Lakers' offense and the coach's new focus of the article just refreshed. Okay, that's always amazing, and now I just lost my place in the article. Thank you so much, Google. But let's see. So during his interview, he shared his vision, and the new coach is focused on finding new ways to create advantages in the matchup. And we have a quote from Redick saying, "I think in terms of what the offense looks like, there will be a decent amount of movement. The shot profile will hopefully improve. We've talked about ways to create more paint touches. We've talked about ways to shoot more threes. We've talked about some of the leeway that you have to give certain players with their mid-range shots, whether that's in a post or isolation. Outside of that, there hasn't been a lot of margin creation. So we're going to try to create some margins. One of which is we're really going to emphasize offensive rebounding and corner crashes," he added. And looking at the chat real quick, Joe Powell continues saying, "Lakers fans since '97, support all Lakers podcasters / live streamers. Appreciate it, Gasol. Fantastic. I should have known that you were a Lakers fan just based off of, the fact that there's Gasol. I don't know if that's your real name or anything, but, Pau Gasol for the Lakers, 2 championships, obviously going to get his jersey retired as well. And if his jersey is already retired, and yeah, I totally get it. Now, outside, continuing with what JJ Redick had to say, he mentions how he wants to emphasize offensive rebounding, and this is sort of what made the Knicks a pretty good team. If you think about it, Josh Hart and his offensive rebounding, and Isaiah Hartenstein along with his offensive rebounding, gave the Knicks several offensive chances to actually score the basketball. And a lot of teams, when they take a shot on offense, a lot of them love to get back on defense and sort of allow the other team to get the rebound and get set on defense to prevent fast break opportunities. Because if you have, let's say, maybe 2 players down in the paint trying to get a rebound, then that would leave your team in a potential 3-on-4 scenario down the other end of the court, which could result in a wide open 3. So not many teams really try to go for the offensive rebound anymore in this league. So emphasizing offensive rebounding it could be a game changer. We saw how it worked with the Knicks because, again, a lot of people aren't really expecting a team to crash for the offensive rebound. So maybe it could work. It could work. We saw it with the Knicks. Maybe teams are now actually going to legitimately adjust to it after the Knicks did it, so it might be a little bit too late to implement that. But we'll see going ahead into the season, which is going to start, rather soon. So with a strategic approach in mind, Redick is determined to fine-tune the Lakers' gameplay. The Lakers will kick off the season with a matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and obviously, the Timberwolves being a rather good team, this is not going to be an easy matchup for the Lakers, and it's really not going to be an easy matchup for Redick or the coaching staff going into their very first game against a Western Conference Finals caliber team. It's going to be a challenge, but I'm sure JJ Redick is ready to meet the challenge, and we'll go ahead and we'll see exactly how well he coaches the Lakers and how well the lineup is actually going to be constructed. Again, the lineup is D'Lo, Austin Reeves, Roy Hachimura, LeBron James, obviously, Anthony Davis, That's the starting lineup that's going to happen with the Lakers. And I say obviously and because, it makes, if you're benching LeBron or Anthony Davis, there's something wrong with you. But that's all that I really have to say about this segment. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the other LA team, the Los Angeles Clippers, and how I fear that they might have future problems, not just with Kawhi, but with another player on their roster. And I'm sure if you guys have been paying attention to the previous few seasons, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested to what I have to say.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about the other Los Angeles team, the Los Angeles Clippers, and some possible problems with not just Kawhi Leonard, but with James Harden. Yes, if you guys have been following the previous seasons, then you know that James Harden could cause certain problems for this team. Now, really, hold on just one second because I just got an email from my teacher and hold on just one second. Let me just go ahead and answer this email real quick. I apologize for that because, I am still a student at college and this is a very important email. Really bad timing, but still a very important email that I do have to answer. And anyways, so as I was saying, the Clippers, they sort of have a problem, not just with Kawhi, but with James Harden. Now, a little bit about the Kawhi problem, because it does introduce a problem with James Harden. Hold on just one second. Let me just finish this email real quick. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So, anyways, as I was saying, oh my gosh, wow, I really went over the limit. Anyways, the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard, obviously we know Kawhi Leonard underwent knee surgery. This prevented him from being able to play in the Olympics at 100%, and this could end up facing some huge problems going into the Clippers season. So there's not exactly a timetable of when Kawhi Leonard is going to be able to return. So Shams tweeted out, Clippers star Kawhi Leonard underwent a procedure on his knee in the offseason, sources tell me, and Law Murray, the NU. The franchise said today Leonard will be limited to strengthening his knee to start Clippers training camp, but team officials are optimistic about his progress. And so he's 33 years old. He hasn't really played that many teams, and he hasn't really played that many games for his team. And the expectation for the Clippers is that, he might not make a solid return coming into the season. Now, he's 33 years old. He's played for 60 or fewer games in 6 of the last 7 seasons. He sat out the entire 2021 and 2022 season after tearing his right ACL in the 2021 playoffs. And this is the second time in his career that he's played fewer than 10 games in the season. And the first was in 2017 and 18, primarily due to quadriceps and tendinopathy. Forgive me if I completely messed up that term. But anyways, the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard, this problem might end up leading to James Harden problems. Because if Kawhi Leonard isn't really healthy to start out the regular season for the Clippers, and if the Clippers aren't off to a good start, James Harden might request a trade. We've seen it happen at the start of several seasons recently with James Harden. When he was on Houston and he realized the team wasn't good enough, he flat out just threw the team under the bus and requested to get traded. He then gets traded to the Brooklyn Nets, where he wants to win a championship. And then once the Nets had its own drama with Kyrie Irving being a quack and Kevin Durant being injured as well from time to time, James Harden purposely started playing a little bit worse and then ended up sort of requesting a trade afterwards over to Philly. Then, when the situation in Philly doesn't work to his favor, he requests a trade from Philly and then goes over to the Clippers. So, it's a pattern. James Harden, he's looking for a championship, which I have no problem with, because at around this stage of his career, he should be looking for a team to compete for a championship with. And if the Clippers aren't off to a hot start and they aren't, in James Harden's mind, ready for the postseason, he might want to request a trade. And this could seriously mess up the Clippers, because not only would they lose James Harden if this happens, they could end up losing Kawhi Leonard as well, because I don't know if Kawhi Leonard's going to want to play on a Clippers roster where he's the only option and not winning a championship. I mean, he didn't want to play for the Spurs on that team. He didn't want to play for the Raptors. He only wanted to join the Clippers if Paul George was going to join the squad and actually give him help, and that ended up backfiring. So this could be a really, really bad situation for the Clippers. And this could end up working even worse, because if with Kawhi and his injury status, hypothetically, if it does end up happening and James Harden requests a trade and then Kawhi Leonard would want out, I'm not entirely sure how many teams are willing to trade for him, because again, Kawhi Leonard's trade value is going to be very, very odd. The Clippers are probably going to want to expect an all-star caliber player in return, but teams might not be willing to offer an all-star caliber player for a player that tends to get injured in the postseason and doesn't even want to seem to be available in the regular season. So the trade value the trade market for Kawhi Leonard is going to be very, very weird, and a lot of teams might not want to even deal with that. So they might be stuck with Kawhi Leonard not playing a single game for them if he doesn't want to play for the Clippers. That is a serious problem. And not to mention, I mean, this entire thing is it's really just bad. It really is just bad. I genuinely, I don't know, what the Clippers are going to do. The Clippers, they have to come in strong, and they have to assert themselves as a dominant team. If they don't do that early on, then they're in serious, serious jeopardy of losing James Harden. Had the Clippers not signed Kawhi Leonard to a 3-year, $152 million contract extension in January, it wouldn't be as devastating. But he also sat out for a large portion of their run in 2024 in the NBA postseason due to a knee inflammation. They now have tied themselves to a player whose last 3 postseason runs ended prematurely due to injury. And to make matters worse, they were all right leg injuries. They're all on his right leg. And this is his right leg is crying. Somebody needs to donate him a new leg at this point. So, again, this brings up the question, will James Harden request a trade? If Kawhi Leonard availability can't be counted on, the Clippers have a couple of players who can step up and try to fill in that void. However, they already have to make it through the next season without Paul George. And they ended up at Paul George. He left in free agency. Obviously, they let him walk. The burden of replacing 2 potential Hall of Famers may be too much for their supporting cast to bear. And they might have trouble landing another star with James Harden as their only other players making all-star level salary. In order to remodel the top of their roster, they would most likely have to trade one of the two. And the thing about that is Harden may already be considering leaving in search of an NBA championship. He's played for 4 teams since 2020. And without Paul George, he might not think that the team is good enough to win, as the article continues. So Harden's history leads to the real possibility that he'll request a trade if Kawhi Leonard's injury concerns persist. And it could extend time. Now, it could go after the season if Leonard misses games at the wrong time. Like, again, this is just a very, very bad situation that the Clippers put themselves in. And I wouldn't be surprised if James Harden decides to go to a completely different team. What team he decides to go to is still up in the air. Like, really, it's all dependent on who's willing to trade for him. I don't know how his trade value is going to, fare against several other players, considering how he's not the same scorer that he was today. And really, it's just it's too early to tell. But I do sense a lot of bad news for the Clippers. If Kawhi Leonard cannot stay healthy, this is some seriously bad news for them. But aside from that, that's all that I have for this 4th segment. So now I'll go ahead and go into the 5th segment where I talk again about Austin Reaves. This time, Austin Reaves is talking about his dream starting lineup, which I thought was rather interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And we are back with the 5th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 5th segment, I just wanted to do this segment for fun. I'm looking at Austin Reaves and his interesting all-time starting 5, according to this headline. And we talked about Austin Reaves in the 5th segment last time, so I'm like, hey, why not talk about Austin Reaves in this segment? So Austin, he's a little bit of a fan favorite for the Lakers and a lot of Lakers fans. I don't know what it is about him. His game isn't really all that impressive. I mean, he's not an all-star caliber player. A lot of Lakers fans think he is for some reason, and I don't know why. And this was sort of like the same impression that Alex Caruso had on the Lakers. Like, everybody just loved the guy because he was so athletic and he can dunk. And this might be the same reason why a lot of people like Austin Reaves. But aside from that, Austin Reaves, he did reveal his all-time starting lineup, and obviously, playing for legends like LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, and Anthony Davis recently, he shared his all-time starting 5, which features some of these incredible players, and I'm just going to go ahead and look at the starting 5 because I'm rather interested in exactly what his starting 5 would be. So Austin Reaves' first choice for his all-time starting 5 is Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and Shaquille O'Neal. He said in a quote, Steph, MJ, Kobe, Bron, Shaq, but if I'm running a team, I'm going Steph, Kobe, KD, Bron, and Shaq. This team has great shooting, scoring, talent, leadership, and strength, making them strong on offense and defense. So interestingly enough, he had two answers for his all-time teams. Like, if he were to make a team, like, he would want Michael Jordan and Kobe and LeBron, Shaq, and Steph. But if he was managing a team, if he was running the team, he would want Kevin Durant in the spot as opposed to having Michael Jordan, which is a little bit interesting. I know a lot of Michael Jordan fans are going to be like, oh my God, what's Austin Reeves thinking? What on earth is that? What in the world? Oh my God, what? A starting lineup without Michael Jordan? An all-time starting lineup without Michael Jordan? What are you thinking? All that stuff, you know? Personally, that wouldn't be my all-time starting lineup, but I do understand why he had to pick between Kobe and MJ. And the big reason, and I'm going to say this, like, so all of you MJ fans, you know, get ready, but Kobe's game is more adaptive to the current way that basketball is being run and the current way that basketball is being played than Michael Jordan's. Kobe takes more three-pointers. Kobe was more... he could break down defenders a lot easier. The defenders were much more competent when Kobe was playing, so he already has a much bigger repertoire of moves than Michael Jordan. And not to mention, the clash between Jordan and Kobe would be devastating. It would almost be like team destructive almost. Not to mention already having Shaq on the team. I mean, having Kobe and MJ constantly butting heads against each other at who should take the last shot and who would do this, who would do that, who would do that. Not to mention LeBron already being on the team as well. That would raise a lot of problems. So making sure to not have that problem and having Kevin Durant on the roster and LeBron James, all of which are players that played with Kobe before, because Kevin Durant, Bron were both on the Olympic team when Kobe was on there. Not to mention Shaq winning 3 championships with Kobe. And then there's Curry in there because, you know, Curry's the best shooter ever, so it's like you need him to run around on screens and shoot the 3-ball whenever you need him to. Like, I think this lineup, it makes total sense. Like, it does have the defense aside from Steph at the point guard, which is why I wouldn't put Steph in the lineup at all. Like, if you're asking me what my starting lineup would be, I'd put LeBron at that 1. Yes, I am putting LeBron at the point guard. Deal with it. So, LeBron would be at the 1. I could argue Kobe being at the 2. And I'd argue Kawhi Leonard being at the 3 because when Kawhi Leonard is in his prime, like we're talking all time, when Kawhi Leonard is in his prime and when he's playing and when he's in the postseason, he is one of the best players in the entire NBA. And like literally 2018, Kawhi Leonard on that roster, I'm taking him. And Kevin Durant as well. I'm not a big fan of Kevin Durant, but I can't deny the fact that he is tall, he is disruptive, he makes life difficult for defenders. And chances are, if you've got to worry about Kobe and Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James, I wonder who's going to be guarding Kevin Durant. And it's between Shaq at the 5 and Tim Duncan at the 5. It's really one of those two because I think Tim Duncan is a very, very, very underrated player. And, like, obviously he's the best power forward, but as the center, I think he's rather underrated because he can really play that center and also provide enough spacing and be rather versatile as opposed to Shaquille O'Neal. Not to mention, there probably wouldn't be any sort of banter between Shaq and Kobe. It depends on, like, you know, whether or not what kind of state of mind that they'd be in because we know that the reason why Kobe kicked Shaq off of the Lakers was mainly because Kobe wanted to be the alpha on the team. If Kobe doesn't have that mentality and has that same winning mentality that he had in the Olympics, then the Shaq and Kobe combination would totally work. And I'm sure Kobe is bitter about the fact that he didn't win multiple or more championships with Shaq. But aside from that, the article continues saying, Austin Reeves swaps Michael Jordan for Kevin Durant in his second lineup, reflecting a style of basketball he's more familiar with. This choice shows his preference for players he has played against and admired, giving his all-time team a modern feel. Reeves also stressed the importance of honoring past legends, stating, all the old heads, just relax, bro, just relax. No disrespect, I can't put something that I literally have no knowledge about. At least I know about Jordan. Magic. That's what he said in the quote. So Reeves started his picks with Steph, who is known to be the best shooter, with 4 championships. We all know his resume. And the next pick was MJ. We all know MJ's resume as well. Next pick is Kobe. We know Kobe's resume as well with his 5 championships, his 2 finals MVPs. and, playing similarly to Jordan, and some would even argue was better than Michael Jordan. Again, that's a completely different argument. Then he picked LeBron for obvious reasons, the greatest basketball player in the history of basketball. The jersey is up on my wall for a reason. He is the GOAT, no questions about it. And then finally Shaq, who is arguably the most dominant big man in the entire league. All of these players, they have impressive resumes and they have impressive records. And they all make very good choices. Reeves' all-time starting five combines old-school legends with today's stars, showing his respect for the game and players who have made an impact on the game, like, Shaq and Michael Jordan. So that's really all that I have to say about Austin Reeves and his starting lineup. Let me know in the comments, do you think his starting lineup is crazy? Do you think it's ridiculous? Do you think it's like, oh, why is Kevin Durant in the starting lineup instead of Michael Jordan? Oh my goodness. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that. But that's all that I have for today on this segment. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That's GSMCPodcast.net. And if you don't want to use the link, that's totally fine. You could also use Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box. Send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson. Be sure to tune into the WNBA games that are going to be going on. They start at 7:30 on ESPN. There's 2 games happening tonight. Caitlin Clark's going to be playing at 7:30 for those of you guys interested. So be sure to stay tuned to those games. And as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.